during a three-day retreat for FHA staff themed Enhancing Federal Housing Authority for Improved Housing Solutions in the Era of Renewed Hope. Ojo noted that upon starting his role, he realized the FHA's operations were largely confined to Abuja and Lagos, despite its national mandate. The Lagos state government has unveiled plans to shut down construction sites that are not supervised by qualified professionals. The general manager of the Lagos State Building Control Agency, LABSCA, Bolan Oki, made this announcement recently while forming an ad hoc task force at his office in Ikeja to enforce the new directive. Oki voiced his concern about the frequent omission of key professionals in building projects throughout the state. He stressed that property owners and developers must involve certified experts, including structural and civil engineers, mechanical and electrical engineers, builders, and architects in their construction activities. Builders and architects in their construction activities. In response to the Lagos State government's plan to introduce a digital rental platform to facilitate monthly rent payments for residents, an expert in the built environment has advised caution. Mr. Olufemi Oyedele suggested that the government should initially implement the program within its own housing estates or apartments. He argued that the government should not attempt to control properties it does not own, particularly given the current Nigerian housing laws, which do not effectively address the issue of completed but vacant houses. Oyedele warned that if the government proceeds with the plan, many landlords might choose to leave their properties vacant or resort to off-the-record rental agreements.
For more housing, finance, and construction, do well to visit www.africanhousingnews.com. The just concluded 18th African International Housing Show had in attendance delegates from the UK Department for Business and Trade, with a panel session on the theme, The Housing We Need for Building Resilience and Sustainable Infrastructure. Let's have a look.
So, Phil, to successfully deliver infrastructure projects, we often have to design and structure such projects in a way that reduces overall risk and promotes attractiveness to both investors and financiers.
Thank you for that question, and it's very good. I'm just going to draw back a little bit on support Radwa's comment, is that sustainability and resilience are critical to ensure that whatever infrastructure you're designing, it's affordable, it's usable, and it's safe by those you intend to use it for, Dimiji. And it doesn't matter in which country it's in or even which city it's in, it needs to be designed for the local context. But how does that come into play? And the answer is that investability of a project, as Radwa mentioned, it's very heavily dependent on the Sustainable Development Goals, on the Paris alignment, and on all the other metrics that determine that a project is sustainable, both in its construction from its carbon use and for its ongoing use for water, energy, whatever. Resilience is different, and I think that's an element that's quite often missing from an understanding of an infrastructure project. Resilience is about making sure that that asset, that infrastructure development, remains usable even after there's a shock.
What are those considerations that are important to achieving bankability? Specifically, what are the barriers to unlocking domestic and foreign investor capital for infrastructure projects at scale?
When we're talking about bankable projects, it's very important to also use the different terminologies you can use. So you can call it bankable project, but you can also call it sustainably financed project. This does not mean sustainably financed just from the money perspective or just for the environmental perspective. In fact, when we say sustainably financed project, we're speaking of all the scope that comes before the financing. And this is a risk that is taken by the study phases. So when you speak about design, as Phil was mentioning, it is very difficult to retrofit. So when you do something, you build it, it's very difficult to come back after and try to fix it. So we make sure that the technical design accounts for this. We make sure that the technical design is done at international standards in order to account for all floods, all issues that could occur not once every 10 years, but once every 100 years. So this is in terms of design. We also look at it in terms of environmental, health, safety, social, and culture. So today, we don't only talk about environment anymore, because it's not all there is to it. At the end, this project is located in a specific context. It caters to the people that are the most affected to it. So you have the people affected by the project, the businesses that are affected by the project. You have the culture that is affected by the project. So all those have to be taken into account before you can even start the project. And you have to do all the required studies at international standards in order to be able to work on unlocking the financing. In addition to those 2 points, there is, of course, the most important point is the financing. And if you look at, for instance, the Renewed Hope Infrastructure Plan, it tells you clearly, this is the plan, this is what we will be doing, and has invited people to do all those pre-feasibility studies to make at international standards to start attracting investments, local and foreign investments, to this infrastructure plan with the goal of developing it for the people. And as HITEC, Final World, we have tried to position ourselves as a link and as a magnet to be able to attract investments, not only to our projects, but to Nigeria as a whole. By positioning ourselves and by investing